Welcome back. Great to have you in. It's my favorite time of the year as we move into August. College football is about ready to start. It starts in late August. NFL camps have opened up. And two stories right now. Ezekiel Elliott, former Ohio State Buckeye, holding out. Michael Thomas, Saints, holding out. Former Ohio State potentially holding out. Zeke, we think he is. We're not sure. We'll know by the end of the day. But Urban Meyer coached both. Ohio State players under Urban generally go to the NFL and star. They remind me a little bit of the Miami Hurricanes. Back in the Miami Hurricanes' heyday, they'd be great in college. Sometimes they'd be better pros. That generally is not the way it works, even with Alabama players now. Ohio State guys hit under Urban in the NFL, and Urban is now joining us via the Coward Global Satellite Network. Let's start with the Michael Thomas, Ezekiel Elliott thing. You coached both of them. It's funny about Zeke because even his father admitted, Urban, coming out of college, he said he's a young 18-year-old man. He is young. He can be a little immature sometimes. Now you're stepping up, could pay him over $100 million. Would you worry about that with Ezekiel Elliott, who's outspoken, he's playful, he's fun? Do you think money would change him? Would you worry about giving him the world?
Well, the thing that listening to your early part before I came on here is that when you talk about Mike Thomas and Zeke Elliott, we have a saying at Ohio State was that your best players have to be your hardest workers. And that's what I look at as a coach. You know, when your best players are not your hardest workers, when your best players are screw-offs and they really set a bad example, that's the issue to me. But you're talking about Zeke is legendary, still in Columbus, we used to call him the best player in America without the ball. He was the best blocker, downfield blocker. I haven't studied him that much for the Cowboys, but I know that's in him. Same with Mike Thomas. Mike Thomas was the hardest working receiver we've ever had, and we've had some great ones there. So that's the biggest thing. When I heard you first talking to him, without understanding the fiscal responsibilities of each team, I heard you talking about the quarterbacks and the defensive linemen. I can't agree more. However, your best players have to be your best workers or you're going to have a bad team.
Yeah, that's really fascinating to know that when you say that. I remember USC had a kid a couple years ago, Juju Smith-Schuster. I had a scout call me, and I said, I've never seen a kid work harder at practice. He had a legendary reputation. So to your point, Tim Duncan had that reputation. Brady's got that reputation. Hard work sends a signal that you got the right guy. You know, it's funny about...
And we've seen Colin, we've seen teams with the great players that don't work hard, and those are usually the worst teams in professional sports, certainly in college.
You know, it is interesting when you look at what's happening to football. Passers are now receivers today. I always felt as a kid growing up, running backs were more valuable than receivers. Your last couple years at Ohio State, and I watched the trend in the NFL, if I told you in your first recruiting class, you can have the best receiver or the best running back in America, who would you take with today's football?
There is no question years ago I would have taken the running back without any hesitation whatsoever. Receivers a lot of times are fill-in guys, but that game's changed. And I remember I had a long talk with Coach Belichick one time. We had some issues on defense and giving up the big play. And he is one of the few coaches that starts from the back end forward. So he's always going to take away your best receiver. And he says a team legitimately can't just run the ball at you consistently and win the game nowadays. You have too good a D lineman. You can scheme up against to stop the run. It's hard to scheme up to stop the pass if the guy's better than your corner.
Yeah.
And so I think the game's changed so much. I think this is a space game. I know it is in college, and I see the trend in professional football too.
You know, it's funny. It used to be the quarterbacks had to be 6'4", and they had to have a rocket arm. But I'm watching Baker Mayfield. I'm watching Kyler Murray. Now, you generally at Ohio State, you had the bigger, kind of prototypical guys. But it is funny to watch what's happening. Should I be concerned? How big is height to you? Because I'm seeing these guys in the NFL now, Coach. Kyler Murray's like 5'9.5". Baker's under 6 feet. How do you look at quarterbacks now going forward?
Well, I stand behind the quarterbacks my entire career, and I am concerned. I know I coached against Baker 2 years in a row. We beat him in Oklahoma, and they beat us in Columbus, and he's one of my favorite players of all time. I know, he planted a flag, I think, in the middle of the horseshoe when they beat us, but he's as competitive. He raises the level of play around them, but there's legitimate issues when your offensive linemen are 6'8". You have these big defensive linemen trying to tear your throat out coming at you, and you can't see. So I think it's a concern, but Russell Wilson's done a great job. Drew Brees has done a great job, and I think Baker Mayfield. I don't know enough about the player, Kyler Murray. I met him at the Heisman this year, and I was a little bit taken aback. He is short, but he's dynamic, and I think that's going to be the coach. To say you're going to run traditional drop-back pass with those players, I don't think you can do it.
Yeah. You know, Pat Fitzgerald, you respect him, Northwestern coach, very smart guy. It's a small private school, and he wins a bunch of games. He came out this week, and he said, you know, kids are on their devices. College football attendance is going down. And I said, well, I think that's part of it, but I also think part of it is there's too many cupcake games on the schedule. You're asking kids to spend a lot of money and people to spend a lot of money in America. They don't want to watch, you know, Alabama take on, you know, Panera Bread or whatever. I don't know, some school I've never heard of. But here's my point, Urban. I don't want to pick on Nick, but here's my point, is that I do think coaches are in a tough spot. You want to get bowl wins. You don't want to lose, but at the end of the day, some of this is consumerism. You can't put a bunch of cupcakes on the schedule. How did you think about it at Ohio State in terms of what's entertaining, what's getting us better, what's easy, what's too easy?
You know, Billy Donovan, when we were at Florida, he was my neighbor. And one time we were sitting there and having dinner, and he said, you know, March Madness is out of control. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, you can't lose a game. Once you get to March Madness, the stress, the pressure, you cannot lose a game. And I looked at him, I said, Billy, what the hell are you talking about? College football coaches at the top 5, 6 programs can never, you're 365 March Madness. So when I was the head coach of Florida, head coach at Ohio State, it was all about win every game. And I could care less about the schedule. I never even thought about it. When I saw that we had to go on the road to Oklahoma, to Virginia Tech, or a tough game on the road, or Florida State when we were at University of Florida, and I would look at some of the other teams not playing a schedule like that, yeah, I would always think, you know, why are we doing this? Yet you don't really think of the fan. However, that's the job as an AD. That's a job of people at the, you know, administrative level that you have to do. You have to worry about that. But here's the concern I have. That's supposed to be one of the top issues to get into the college football playoff, and I'm not sure it is. You know, I am not sure that's the number one. You know, some conferences are playing 9 conference games, some are playing 8, some are playing FCS schools, some are not. There's got to be, you know, I do believe that has to be looked at in a very neutral voice, neutral eyes, and say, what's the right thing to do for attendance, but also who's going to get in that playoff.
By the way, we all know Bama, Clemson, Georgia are going to be really good. And I have a feeling Washington's going to be good out west. You know, Notre Dame will be pretty good. I think Ohio State, Michigan. I think Michigan's O-line's pretty good. Ohio State, they're stocked. I got 2 minutes here.
Old after 2 games, they had lost both of them. And he just says, snap my fingers, and I'm back.
Right.
And he started off slightly slowly, but you know the rest of the story. In only 14 games, he won the regular season MVP, and then he won the Super Bowl MVP, and they won their 2nd straight Super Bowl.
Correct.
Okay, so at this position, it's usually not that detrimental. Like if you're a quarterback and you hold out, you're losing all the reps and all the rhythm. And
because so much is about the other position is about timing.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I toss you the ball and you run to the opening hole.
Okay.
And the same thing that happened to Emmett. Emmett offensive line was so good. Skip, you remember that big massive ball. And everybody talk about, well, this line might be better than the old Cowboys. No, it's not.
It was the greatest offensive line I ever saw.
No, it's not. This offensive line can't hold a candle to the offensive line.
Okay.
But it is a very good line, and I believe Zeke would be able to pick right up where he left off if he were to miss time.
Okay. Now, back to the man who has his fingers on the purse strings of the Dallas Cowboys, one Jerry Jones with his son Stephen Jones. And I'm going to read you a quote from this past combine from Jerry Jones. And I want you to keep this in perspective as you continue to pick away at why is Zeke doing this and that and the other. This is why Jerry Jones is going to get this done and figure it out. However